Oh my goodness, guys. Ronda Rousey just did an interview. If you don't know who Ronda Rousey is, if you're a new fan, basically like 10 years ago, she was ripping through all the women in the bantamweight division. She was a bantamweight champion. She was one of the first female superstars in the UFC. And then she fought Holm. And after that happened, she lost again to Amanda Nunes, and then she retired from the UFC. And just yesterday, I saw an interview that she did, basically giving an excuse as to why she lost to Holm, why she didn't come back after Amanda Nunes, and her entire situation right now. So let's give it a watch.
I felt like I had to come back for another fight because I felt like I owed it to the fans, right? And everyone that had believed in me. Maybe I needed to give them an example of overcoming adversity. But it was to the point where the next fight, the first time I got touched, I was out on my feet. And it was so hard because I'd never been faster, never been stronger, never had a better grasp of the game. I'd never been so much better than everybody else. But, your brain doesn't callous. It doesn't heal back stronger after a break. It's just an inevitable decline. And I just couldn't keep fighting at a level anymore. I'd taken punishment and taking punishment until I couldn't take it anymore. And then when I got to the point that I couldn't take it anymore, then I was like vilified as like, oh, she was all hype and she was just lucky and she, and people making all these judgments about me in a fight where I was literally, my first loss, I was not like, my mouth guard was bad. I literally came into that fight concussed from slipping down some stairs already after all of these years of, concussions. And then I had absolutely terrible weight cut, which, that means you have less fluid in your brain to protect it. And I was out on my feet for the entire fight. I was just trying to make it look like I wasn't hurt, but I wasn't there cognitively. I couldn't think as fast. I couldn't judge distance. And just from that one fight, everybody felt like, oh, she's a fraud. And I know that like I'm the greatest fighter that has ever lived, but when it got to a point where I'd just taken so much neurological damage that I couldn't take it anymore, suddenly everything that I accomplished meant nothing. Then after that second fight, and I saw how all these people that I was coming back to fight for had suddenly turned against me, all of my appreciation for them turned into resentment. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. I didn't want to do anything for them anymore because I gave them everything that I had, and they hated me for not being able to give them more.
Here are my thoughts, right? This is, on the one hand, I feel like this is kind of delusions of grandeur from Ronda Rousey. The way I remember it is that Ronda Rousey was being built up to be this absolutely unbeatable machine of a woman. And for a while, it seemed that way. Every single person she faced, she took them down and she armbarred them and she beat them. And it was just, most of the fights were not competitive and they didn't even go the distance, I don't think. And she was being hyped up so much to the point where, people like Joe Rogan and Dana White were saying like, hey, maybe she could even beat Floyd Mayweather, right? I remember there was a conversation going on there that like, if it was a real MMA fight, she could beat Floyd Mayweather. Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know, right? But then this fight with Holm, which she was supposed to win. I remember her going in as the favorite. She was supposed to win that fight. Holm essentially stopped any grappling and pieced her up on the feet and knocked her out with a head kick, right? And the thing I feel like, the reason why that was so, satisfying for fans is because Ronda Rousey was pretty arrogant and cocky, right? Which is fine once you've proven yourself, but like she never took any criticism and she never took any like pointers or anything like that. Like I recall interviews where people say, oh, like you could fix this with your armbar, you could do this better, you could do this better. And she's like, nah, I'm good, right? Because she was winning and what she was doing was working, right? But if you look at like the all-time greats, right? Look at someone like George St. Pierre, right? Who was active around the time that Ronda was coming up and getting all that attention and everything like that. George St. Pierre, there's a video of him asking Joe Rogan to teach him his like spinning back kick, right? George St. Pierre, the greatest of all time, asking, a commentator. And Joe Rogan has a vicious spinning back kick, but he goes to him and he asks him like, hey, can you show me this? And he's like, I don't think I could show you much, but the one thing I could give you is this pointer here, right? Like, that's what happened. And it wasn't a place of arrogance. It was humble. Even though he was the greatest, probably I think he was the champion at that point, right? But he went ahead and like asked for advice where he thought he could learn something. And that was the difference. If you've made it this far, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and the subscribe button, it helps with the YouTube algorithm and it helps grow the channel. And leave me a comment. You know, and what happens is now she's coming out with these excuses. I was concussed, my mouth guard was bad, all these different things. You know, whereas if you look at a lot of people, a lot of fighters, they'll say, yeah, you know, she was better than me tonight, right? She was the better person now, but I'm gonna train and I'm gonna work and I'm gonna fix my problems. I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna face her again, and we'll see who's really the better person. But none of that happened, right? It was just like, we just heard a plethora of excuses, which, like, fighters make excuses. It happens, right? But the thing that kind of, I think, makes fans, I would say, a little bit bitter is the fact that, like, fans love a comeback, right? Fans love a comeback story where it's like, okay, I've been knocked down, but I'm going to get back, I'm going to get better, and I'm going to keep going, right? And we've seen that with so many athletes who've kind of like gone and become superstars, right? Is that they're constantly improving, they're constantly getting better. Even after losses, they come back and they show grit and determination. But what happens is, Amanda Nunes, Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time, right? So that's probably an outlier, but when she came back against Amanda Nunes, it looked exactly the same. You know, Amanda Nunes pieced her up on the feet and knocked her out. And then after that, she just retired, right? She quit. She gave up. And maybe all the things she said here is true, right? Maybe she was too concussed. Maybe she had brain injuries. Maybe she had all of these different things. But and so nobody knows the medical history there. But the thing to me is, if you're bad, or if you lose, the thing that makes champions, makes GOATs, makes people the greatest of all time, isn't necessarily a clean record, isn't necessarily being undefeated. It's constantly getting better. And so if she were to have gone away, trained, worked on a bunch of different stuff, come back, she still probably would have been able to clear out most of the women in that division anyway, with the exception of maybe probably Amanda Nunes, because Amanda Nunes is the greatest of all time. But she didn't. She just left and she quit, right? Once the glass was broken and she found out that she wasn't as good as she thought she was never the same. Right, and we've seen this with other people, like Darren Till as an example, right? Darren Till was supposed to be this next great thing, and then he had a couple of losses in a row. By the way, he handled them much better than Ronda Rousey, but his confidence was never the same. And so I just think, as fans, and me as a fan, right? Like, I was a casual back then. I would say now I would call myself a super fan. Right? But even back then, watching these things and remembering what was happening, you know, what we wanted to see, what me and the people I used to watch with were talking about was like, let's see if she goes away, she comes back stronger. We want to see her, you know, do some things to improve, and then like when she comes back, and you know, let's see a rematch. Let's see her rematch with Nunes. Let's see what she does next. But she just quit, right? And she gave up. She went to the WWE, all these different things. So, for me, first of all, she's not the greatest of all time, clearly. And the fact that she thinks this is kind of strange. But the other thing that bothers me is, like, she doesn't take any personal accountability. Like, fans suck. People are ruthless, right? People can be cruel as well. And she was going through probably the two worst losses of her career, absolutely. But, again, it's like, what makes a champion, what makes someone the greatest, is the fact that they can kind of put all that stuff out. They can, you know, put the critics out the door, and focus on what they need to do to get better and to get what they really want, right? To be a champion, to be the best, to be whatever it is, right? And I mean, the reality is, for women's MMA, Ronda was a pioneer. She still probably is one of the all-time greats in terms of what she actually accomplished in the sport. But again, it's just one of these things that when you hear about like her excuses here and the things she's saying, I just feel like it's not, she doesn't really have a leg to stand on here, because it's not the fans' fault. Fans are fans, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people that still supported you even in your 2 losses. Of course, there's some people that are ready to, tear people down when they go through stuff. That's just that's life. But coming here and saying like it's the fans, I was concussed, I was this, I was that, and I just like, it doesn't work. You can't do that. You're not the greatest of all time. And the reason you're not the greatest of all time is because you quit. You gave up after 2 losses. How many people, right the ship, get the losses back in their corner and go on a tear? And here's a great example of this is Charles Oliveira, right? Charles Oliveira went through a string of losses. He has losses to Max Holloway. He has losses to, I think, Paul Felder, right? But he comes back. He has the most submissions for men in UFC history, I believe. And he won the championship. And he's basically better right now than anybody else in the lightweight division with the exception of Islam Makhachev. We'll see if Arman Sarukian can keep up with him. But that's what it is. And so, but what Ronda did, she had 2 losses and she quit. And again, like those losses weren't to scrubs, right? Like Amanda went on to be the GOAT of women's MMA, right? And Holly Holm's had some good wins and some losses and whatever, but she's good. So it's like, these excuses don't make a ton of sense. She's not the greatest of all time. She's contributed a ton to the sport. There's no doubt about that. But, it's just one of these things that I don't see any personal accountability in this little speech that she gave, right? It's all, it's all stuff that happened to me instead of things that I could do to be better. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about that and give my 2 cents and whatever, because, yeah, I really don't think that that she has a leg to stand on here, and it kind of bugs me. It bugs me when people behave this way and just kind of make excuses and so on. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching.